Thousands of National Guard troops have been activated across several states, including D.C. They include Atlanta, Georgia, where 2 officers have been fired for the use of excessive force caught on camera in this body cam footage. The Atlanta mayor condemning their actions yesterday. Watch.
We understand that our officers are working very long hours under an enormous amount of stress. But we also understand that the use of excessive force is never acceptable. After review of that footage, Chief Shields and I have made the determination that 2 of the officers involved in the incident last night will be terminated immediately.
Joining me right now is Georgia Congressman, House Judiciary Committee member Doug Collins. Congressman, it's good to have you this morning. Your reaction to all of that. I think people want more than just these guys getting fired.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of things, Maria, but I have to commend the mayor. Mayor Bottoms has done an outstanding job. She's been very forceful. She's been very direct. She understands the frustration and the anxiety of all of us feel. There's no way you cannot watch what happened last Monday and see someone killed and not know that there had to be a justice in that situation. But she also understands there's a line to that. Atlanta and the state of Georgia have a history of protests that are effective because they're nonviolent. But she's not going to tolerate it, and the chief took a quick action to fire them, and we'll see if there's anything pending elsewhere in that. But that's the way you have to look at this. You have to, peaceful protests, we need to see that. Folks who want to go out and share the outrage that I feel, that others feel, that the communities feel, we've been seeing that. But the destruction and the looting and what I just heard on your reporting has got to stop. You cannot use the death of this man. It needs to be a catalyst for us to make change in our law enforcement community, our community relations. It does not need to be a catalyst for looting and rioting and criminal activity.
Well, how will that resonate, though, Congressman? I mean, what do you need to do in Congress? What does the administration need to do to get calm now in this country? Because I think, yes, people want to see accountability and justice. At the same time, we don't want to see this looting and destruction. Do we know who this is? Who's behind this? Somebody must be paying for it, right?
Well, it's looking like, as your reporting said earlier today, that there is some coordination. And if it's across state lines, then that definitely lets Attorney General Barr and others and states get together to see what is actually happening here and if it has been a more organized effort here. But this goes back to something else that the President, Trump, has also been working on, that I've worked on for a long time, is criminal justice reform. That's also mental health reform. It's actually taking the steps that the President, and we've talked about in the bill that I wrote, First Step Act, on how we deal with the criminalization, how we deal with our prison population. But it's got to go further than that. And we were part of, in Congress, a police working group that actually went around a couple of years ago and actually was trying to see how cities and states were doing this right. And what we found was when cities and communities like my hometown of Gainesville and Hall County, Atlanta, and others that are across the country had engaged communities so that people could understand that the police and the communities could work together, find peaceful solutions. That's the kind of thing that we need to have right now. And giving the law enforcement the tools that they need to crack down on these who would take advantage of a situation. This is a time for love. This is a time for peace. This is a time for understanding. But it's also a time that we cannot let the loud, shrill voices override what we can actually do and let our country begin to get better from this instead of worse.
All right, let me switch gears and ask you about the origins of the Russia probe, Congressman, because there are many people who want to see accountability for wrongdoing done during the 2016 election. Yesterday on Sunday Morning Futures, I spoke exclusively with Wisconsin Senator Ron Johnson. He told me there was, quote, total corruption in the transition between the Obama and Trump administrations. Watch this. The amount of media leaks in the first 125 days is actually stunning. Tell us what you learned, Senator.
Actually, a leak a day. 125 leaks in the first 126 days. And 62 of these leaks threatened national security by President Obama's own definition of that, because they were concerned about that as well. They had 8 leaks of a similar nature in Obama versus the Bush administration, about 9. They had 62. President Trump had 62 that threatened national security. It was completely out of control.
Congressman, what do we know here in terms of how high up the chain it went to the effort to take down Donald Trump? And, you know, you're looking at all those leaks. Basically, what they were doing was just leaking people's names and muddying those names up so that the public would think that there was collusion.
Well, it was. I mean, when you have nothing, you have to then begin to develop a story. And what we're seeing here, and I'm glad that Senator Johnson is on this and beginning to put this out. This is something that many of us, and you and I and others for the last few years, have been screaming about. We were seeing the patterns here. We were seeing this going on. And over the past couple of weeks, we've actually began, with the General Flynn case, have actually started to get to some of the bottom of some of these actual approaches, because they had nothing on this president. So all they could do was start to sully his name and just to say this campaign is illegitimate, the candidate's illegitimate, he's colluding with Russians, and then to try and take down the early nascent stages of his presidency. And they did this with the full power and authority of the offices that they had. It's got to stop. All the way up to President Obama in the White House 2 weeks before. That's what we see.
And by the way, Dana Boente, the lawyer at the FBI, resigning this weekend. He was one of the people who signed the FISA warrants to wiretap Carter Page.
Yes. And you're going to see more. I think there's hearings this week in the Senate with Rod Rosenstein. There's going to be others. This is time that we start getting the answers and held accountable. It's not just answers here, Maria. We've talked about this before. We know what has happened. It has become very blatant that the corrupt cabal tried to take down a candidate and a president. That's fact. Now we need to get on to the accountability so that no one believes that they can do this again. If they believe that this gets away with it, then it may not be 5 years, it may not be 4 years, it may not be 10. But somebody at the FBI will decide that, in the DOJ, that they can do this again inside of government to take down someone coming in that they don't like. This can never happen again. And President Trump has endured more than anybody else in this regard.
We've been talking about this for a few years now, Congressman. We'll see what happens. Thank you so much for weighing in. Always a pleasure to see you, sir. We'll see you soon.
Good to see you as well.
Congressman Doug Collins joining me there. We will be right back. Stay with us.